Welcome, everyone, to the Daily English Practice channel.
We are so glad you're here.
Yeah, if you're tuning in, you are likely putting in the grueling hours to master this wild, totally contradictory language, and we see that dedication.
You really do. It's a massive undertaking.
Today, we are taking a huge stack of source materials, articles, linguistic research, teaching guides to completely reverse engineer the chaos of English.
And, we're not just going to read a list of common errors.
No, that's boring.
Right. Memorizing lists without context is exactly why that boardroom disaster happens in the first place. We're going to dig into the underlying psychology of it.
And the historical accidents, plus the literal physical mechanics that cause these specific mistakes.
Because you really need to understand the why if you want to fix the what.
Exactly. So to do that, we need a better framework than just, like, here are rules to memorize. Let's look at language like a computer system.
I love this analogy.
Right. First, you have the hardware. That's the physical sounds your mouth actually has to produce.
The physical machinery.
Yeah. Then you have the software applications. That's the vocabulary and the phrases your brain tries to run on that hardware.
And then the operating system.
Exactly, the operating system. The grammar that governs how everything interacts.
That structural approach is just so vital because a learner's native language dictates the specific bugs they're going to encounter in each of those stages.
Yeah, your brain has been perfectly optimized for a completely different system.
Right, for decades. You can't just install new software and expect the old hardware to know what to do with it.
So let's start with that hardware, the phonetic battleground.
Before you even worry about what a word means, you're asking your facial muscles to perform gymnastics they have literally never attempted before.
Yeah, and the research points out that muscle memory is just relentless.
Oh, it really is. If you've spent 30 years moving your tongue and lips in specific geometric patterns to speak, say, Japanese or Arabic or French.
Your mouth is set in its ways.
Exactly. Asking those muscles to suddenly contort into an entirely new shape is a massive physical challenge.
It's like asking a world-class marathon runner to suddenly, I don't know, perform on the parallel bars.
That's a great way to put it. The physical conditioning is there, but the specific neuromuscular pathways are entirely foreign.
And the undisputed hardest gymnastic routine in the English language is the infamous the sound.
Oh, absolutely.
I was looking at the research on this, and honestly, I have so much sympathy for anyone trying to master it. It's globally one of the rarest and most difficult consonant sounds to produce.
It really is, and the frustration is compounded by the fact that English doesn't even have the decency to make it a single sound.
Wait, really? It's not just one sound?
Nope. When you push the letters T and H together, you are actually looking at three entirely different phonetic outcomes.
See, that just feels like a deliberate prank by whoever invented the language.
It does seem a little malicious, doesn't it?
Totally.
So the first variation is the voiced th. If you look at the phonetic alphabet, the symbol looks like a lowercase die with a little cross through the top.
Okay, I think I've seen that one.
Yeah. When you produce this, you must physically engage your vocal cords. You should feel a distinct vibration in your throat.
Like a buzzing.
Exactly. Think of words acting as grammatical glue. Words like this, that, these, those, they, or them.
Let me try it. This. Yeah, if I put my hand on my throat, I can actually feel the buzz.
Right. Now, the second variation strips that vibration away entirely. This is the voiceless the th.
Okay, so no buzzing.
Right. The symbol looks like a circle with a horizontal line through the middle. Your vocal cords are silent. The sound is produced entirely by the friction of air moving through your mouth.
Give me some examples of that one.
Words like three, thing, thought, and therapy.
Three. Yeah, no buzz at all. Just a rush of breath.
Yeah.
But what about the third one? You said there were three.
The third is a historical leftover. It's much rarer, where the th is simply pronounced as a hard T.
A hard T, like the letter T.
Exactly. You see this in loanwords or proper nouns, like the country of Thailand or the River Thames in London.
Oh, right. We don't say Thailand. We say Thailand.
Precisely.
So if I'm a learner and my native language doesn't have these sounds, my brain defaults to the closest approximation. That's why someone asks for tree apples instead of three apples.
Exactly. Your brain is trying to help you by substituting a sound it already knows.
So how do we rewrite that hardware? How do we fix the glitch?
It requires overriding your natural instincts. To produce those fricative th sounds, you must place the very tip of your tongue slightly between your upper and lower teeth.
Wait, literally sticking your tongue out.
Just a little bit, yes. And then you force air out over it. If you place your tongue behind your top teeth, which is the resting position for many global languages, you block the airflow entirely.
And that gives you that sharp, percussive T sound.
Right. You have to willingly stick your tongue out, which feels very unnatural to a lot of people.
The research suggests sitting in front of a mirror and physically watching your tongue.
Hmm.
But I don't know, I have to push back on that methodology a bit.
Oh, why is that?
Whenever I see learners drilling isolated sounds in a mirror, they get incredibly tense. They become so hyper-aware of their tongue placement that when they try to have a real conversation, they freeze up.
They're overthinking it.
Exactly, they're overthinking the mechanics instead of focusing on the flow of the interaction.
That is a very valid critique, but from a motor learning perspective, you can't integrate a movement until you have isolated it.
So you need the isolation first.
Yeah. The mirror drill isn't meant to mimic natural conversation. It's meant to break the old neuromuscular habit. You isolate the muscle in a low-stakes environment, the mirror, so that the brain eventually delegates that movement to the subconscious.
Oh, I see.
Once the muscle memory is established, then you focus on conversational flow.
Okay, so the mirror is the gym, but the conversation is the actual sport. You don't bring the dumbbells onto the field. That makes a lot of sense.
That's a perfect analogy.
Let's move from consonants to vowels. Specifically, the invisible rhythm of English. I was reading about this concept, and I think it's the most mind-bending part of English pronunciation. The schwa.
Ah, yes. The schwa, the lazy sound.
Right. It's the most common vowel sound in the entire language, and yet it doesn't even have its own letter in the alphabet.
It's the silent majority of English vowels.
I've always thought of spoken English as functioning like a jazz rhythm. It's not a ticking metronome where every single beat gets the exact same emphasis.
No, not at all.
Some beats are heavily accented, and some beats are almost entirely swallowed. They just vanish into the background noise.
And that rhythm is the fundamental difference between a stress-timed language and a syllable-timed language.
Can you break that down for us? What's a syllable-timed language?
Sure. In a syllable-timed language like Spanish, Italian, or Japanese, every syllable generally receives an equal unit of time. If you say the word radio in Spanish, you have 3 clear, distinct phonetic beats. But English is stress-timed. We care about the distance between the stressed syllables, and we will ruthlessly compress any vowels that get in the way.
And the sound we compress them into is the schwa. It sounds like a lazy, relaxed
Exactly, just ugh.
Take the word memory, M-E-M-O-R-Y. If you apply syllable-timed logic to that word, you'll carefully pronounce every vowel. Memory.
And if you speak that way, native speakers will understand you, but you will sound vaguely robotic.
Right, you sound like a text-to-speech program from the early 1990s.
Because the natural stress-timed way to say it is memory, or maybe memory, we hit the first syllable incredibly hard, mem, and that middle O just collapses into a schwa or disappears completely.
One of the teaching guides uses the word chocolate to illustrate this beautifully.
Yeah.
The learners use 4 distinct written syllables. C-H-O-C-O-L-A-T-E. Chocolate.
But a native speaker crushes it into 2 sounds. Chocolate.
Chocolate, yeah. The O and the A are entirely reduced.
And furthermore, this doesn't just happen within individual words, it happens to entire sentences.
Oh, absolutely.
We take functional glamour words like to and the and reduce them to schwas. We rarely articulate, I am going to the store. We say, I am going to the store.
To th. It is almost a grunt.
It really is.
This perfectly explains why learners can read an English newspaper with perfect comprehension, but the second they turn on a Hollywood movie, they feel completely lost.
They're listening for clear vowels that the actors are simply not pronouncing.
The psychological shift required here is massive. As a learner, you have to give yourself permission to be linguistically lazy.
I tell my students that all the time.
Stop trying to honor every letter on the page. Locate the stressed syllable, hit it with confidence, and let the rest of the word just fall out of your mouth.
Give yourself permission to be lazy. I think a lot of people will be thrilled to hear that advice.
For sure. So let's look at another hardware issue that's heavily dictated by geography. The research highlights the classic phonetic battle between L and R.
Yes. This is a well-documented challenge, particularly prevalent among speakers of Asian languages like Japanese, Korean, and certain dialects of Chinese.
And this leads to the classic mistake of confusing a word like rice with lice,
Exactly.
which completely ruins a dinner party.
Ah.
This lice is delicious.
Yeah, that's not what you want to say to your host.
Not at all. But why does this specific switch happen so frequently?
It comes down to phonemic mapping in the brain. In many Asian languages, the R and L sounds don't exist as distinct, separate phones that change the meaning of a word.
Okay, so they're grouped together.
Right. They might exist as allophones, variations of the same sound family. So the learner's brain literally has not been trained to hear the acoustic difference, let alone instruct the mouth to produce it.
So if your brain doesn't register the difference, how do you train your mouth to separate them?
By focusing on the physical contact points inside the mouth.
The hardware mechanics again?
Exactly. To produce a clear English L, the tip of your tongue must make firm physical contact with the alveolar ridge.
The alveolar ridge, that's that bony bump right behind your upper front teeth, right?
That's the one. Try it. La la la.
La la la. Yeah, I can really feel the pressure of my tongue against that ridge.
Now contrast that with the English R, and the English R is strange.
It is a really weird sound when you think about it.
It's a very hard rhotic sound, completely different from the beautiful trilled R of Spanish or Italian. To make the English R, the tongue pulls backward into the center of the mouth.
Okay, pulling back.
The sides of the tongue might lightly touch the back molars, but the crucial part is that the tip of the tongue touches absolutely nothing. It just hovers in midair. Rah, rah, rah.
Oh, wow. So it's a binary physical state,
Yeah.
contact versus no contact.
Precisely. If your tongue tip touches anything, you're making an L. If it hovers, you're making an R.
So by tying the sound to a physical sensation, you bypass the auditory confusion. That's a great tip. The sources mention another geographical trap too, this time plaguing European speakers. The W versus the V.
Yes, speakers of Germanic languages frequently swap these.
Like, a German speaker might look at the word water and pronounce it Vater.
Or look at the word west and say vest.
I am wearing a vest while drinking water. Which paints a very specific, slightly comical picture.
The hardware fix here is entirely about lip shape and dental involvement.
Dental involvement, I like that phrase.
For the VAV sound, it's a fricative requiring contact. Your top teeth must lightly bite your bottom lip. Ba, ba.
Okay, biting the lip.
But the W sound in English is what we call a labial velar approximant. Your teeth are not allowed to participate at all.
No teeth allowed.
None. You must heavily round your lips into a tight circle, as if you're about to whistle, and then quickly unround them. Wah, wah.
If your teeth touch your lip at any point, you've failed the W. It's fascinating how much of pronunciation is just basic anatomy.
It really is just physical conditioning.
But the anatomy alone doesn't explain the absolute madness of English vowels. Specifically, the short I versus the long E.
Oh, the minimal pairs that cause maximum anxiety.
The pairs are terrifying. You have sit versus seat, you have fit versus feet, you have hit versus heat, and worst of all, live versus leave.
That last one causes so many misunderstandings.
Imagine a tourist checking out of a hotel. They walk up to the receptionist, slide their key across the desk, and instead of using the long E to say, I am going to leave, they use the short I and declare, I am going to live.
Oh, dear.
The receptionist is just staring at them thinking, congratulations on choosing life, but checkout was at 11 a.m.
Or consider the reverse. A host offering a guest a chair and saying, please take a sip.
Oh no, that borders dangerously close to a profanity.
Exactly, rather than the polite, take a seat.
It's a disaster waiting to happen. Why is that distinction so hard to nail down?
Because the short I, the sound found in sit, is incredibly rare globally. Most languages possess the long E, the sound found in seat.
The long E is easier.
It's a tense vowel, so it's more common. Your facial muscles engage, your mouth stretches wide laterally, almost like a forced smile, and the tongue raises high in the mouth. Seat.
Yeah, I feel the tension in my cheeks.
The short I, however, requires dropping that tension completely. The jaw lowers slightly, the lips relax, and the tongue drops. Sit.
It's so subtle.
It is. The research emphasizes that before a learner can produce this relaxed sound, they must be subjected to intense auditory drilling. Teachers will read minimal pairs back to back, ship, sheep, sheep, forcing the student's brain to finally register the subtle acoustic shift.
Which brings us to the visual cues on the page that completely betray those sounds. We have to address the history of English spelling to understand the magic E and silent letters.
Ah, spelling, the ultimate betrayal.
It really is. If I have the word N-O-T, it is pronounced not. The O is short. If I add an E to the end, it becomes note. The O stretches out into a long sound.
Right.
Learners logically look at that E and want to pronounce it. They want to say no T. Because why on earth would you write a letter down if you aren't going to speak it out loud?
To answer that, we have to look at the Great Vowel Shift. It was a massive phonetic change that occurred in England between the 14th and 17th centuries.
Okay, time for a history lesson. Let's hear it.
Before this shift, in Middle English, that at the end of the word was actually pronounced. But as the centuries passed, the way English speakers pronounced their vowels dramatically drifted. They started raising their tongues higher in their mouths.
So the spoken hardware was changing, but what about the written software?
The written software got frozen in time. Right in the middle of this massive pronunciation shift, William Caxton brought the printing press to England in the late 1400s.
Oh, so they just locked it in.
Exactly. The printers needed standardized spellings to mass-produce books, so they locked in the spelling based on the old pronunciations. The spelling reflects the ghosts of how English used to sound 500 years ago.
That is wild.
Today, that silent E no longer makes a sound. Its function has shifted to become a visual code. It leaps backward over the consonant and instructs the preceding vowel to say its own alphabetical name. The O in note says O. The I in bite says I.
That historical context is the ultimate aha moment. It's not that English is trying to trick you. It's that you are reading a 15th century manuscript out loud in a 21st century voice.
That's a perfect way to summarize it.
And that perfectly explains silent consonants too, right?
Yeah.
The K in knife or knee,
Yeah.
the D in Wednesday, the G in foreign.
Exactly. When a native Spanish speaker looks at Wednesday, their brain automatically maps every letter to a sound. They try to say Wednesday.
So how do we break that visual to auditory link?
The educational resources offer a highly effective psychological intervention. When studying vocabulary with silent letters, write the words down on paper. Then, take a bright red pen and violently cross out the silent letters.
Strike them from the visual record.
Exactly. Cross out the D in Wednesday. Cross out the G in foreign.
You're physically interacting with the word to retrain your pattern recognition. You're showing your brain that those letters are dead. That sounds incredibly satisfying.
It restores a sense of agency to the learner. You are actively deleting the confusion.
I love that. But just as you get your hardware running smoothly, just as your mouth masters the hovering R and ignores the silent letters, your brain, exhausted by all this physical effort, starts looking for shortcuts to save energy.
The brain is very lazy.
It is. It starts trying to map English words directly onto your native vocabulary. And this takes us to the second level of our system, the software. The vocabulary traps.
Specifically, the psychological phenomenon linguists refer to as false friends, or faux amis.
Our poor friend Alejandro from the boardroom story is the poster child for this.
He really is. A false friend is a word in your target language that looks or sounds remarkably similar to a word in your native language, but possesses a radically different meaning.
It's a bug in the brain's predictive text software.
That's exactly it. Your brain sees a familiar shape, instantly assumes a familiar meaning to save cognitive processing power, and entirely bypasses your critical thinking.
Let's unpack the Spanish traps from the research, because the etymology behind them is fascinating.
Yes.
We know embarazada means pregnant, not embarrassed. But let's say Alejandro tries to recover. He wants to explain that he's acting weird because he has a terrible head cold and a stuffy nose.
Okay.
The Spanish word for having a head cold is constipado. So in front of the executives, he shouts, "I'm sorry, I am severely constipated."
Oh my goodness. So now the board of directors believes he is pregnant and suffering from a catastrophic bowel obstruction.
It gets worse. He tries to pivot to the presentation. He wants to show them his physical folder of documents to prove he's prepared. The Spanish word for folder is carpeta. So he says, "Look, I brought my carpet for you to see."
They think he brought a floor rug to a corporate strategy meeting. This poor guy.
Right. Finally, he gives up. He wants to wish them a successful meeting as he retreats. The Spanish word for success is éxito. He points to the door and yells, "I wish you much exit," before fleeing the room.
It is a brilliant, albeit tragic, sequence of events. But if we ask why this happens, we have to look at the Latin roots.
Right, because they share a lot of history.
Both English and Spanish draw heavily from Latin. Over thousands of years, the meanings of those root words drifted in different directions based on cultural usage.
Tell me about exit and éxito.
The root of éxito, meaning success, and exit, meaning leaving, both come from the Latin exodus, meaning a going out or a result.
Okay, I see where this is going.
English focused on the physical act of going out the door. Spanish focused on the metaphorical result of an endeavor, how it turns out.
They share the same grandfather, but grew up to have completely different careers.
Exactly.
And this happens in Germanic languages, too, which are even closer cousins to English.
The German false friends are startling. Take the word gift. In English, a gift is a joyous present. You give a gift at a birthday party.
Yeah, everybody loves a gift.
But in German, gift translates directly to poison.
Wow. So if a German speaker smiles and says, "I brought a special gift for your coffee,"
Yeah.
you should politely decline and leave the building.
I would highly recommend it. The word chef is another common corporate trap.
Well, let me guess. That doesn't mean someone who cooks.
In English, a chef operates in a kitchen. In German, a chef is simply the boss or manager of any enterprise. A German executive saying, "I have a performance review with my chef," creates a very confusing image of culinary corporate management.
My chef said I need to increase our Q3 profits. That's amazing. And what about the word bald?
Ah, bald. In English, it means lacking hair. In German, it means soon.
I will see you bald.
Mhm.
That sounds like a threat regarding someone's receding hairline. What about Dutch?
Dutch offers some fantastic cognitive dissonance. The Dutch word wet, W-E-T, does not mean covered in water. It means law.
So studying the wet means going to law school.
Precisely. Furthermore, the Dutch word slim does not refer to a slender physical figure. It means smart or highly intelligent.
So calling someone slim is praising their brain, not their waistline. That is wonderful.
Yeah.
But we absolutely cannot skip French. The French language fundamentally rewired the English vocabulary software after the Norman conquest in 1066.
It was a massive linguistic collision.
The French-speaking Normans conquered England and layered their elite vocabulary over the Germanic peasant language.
And over a millennium, those layered words shifted. The word actuellement is a perfect example of a French false friend. Visually, it is nearly identical to the English word actually.
But the emotional tone is completely different, isn't it?
Entirely. In French, actuellement means currently or at this present moment. So a French professional might write an email saying, "Actuellement, I am working on the budget." They mean currently, I am working on it.
Doesn't make sense.
But an English speaker reads, "Actually, I am working on the budget," which carries a tone of defensiveness, correction, or passive aggression.
It sounds like an argument. Like, actually, I am working on it. Stop bothering me. And then there's the verb demander. It looks exactly like the English verb demand.
But in French, demander simply means to politely ask a question.
And in English.
To demand is forceful, authoritative, and leaves no room for refusal. If a French learner says, "I demand to know the time," they are trying to be polite, but they sound like a hostile interrogator.
This proves that learning vocabulary isn't just about definitions. It's about tone, history, and avoiding accidental hostility.
Tone is everything.
But false friends at least have a logical historical origin. Let's move to a piece of vocabulary software that seems completely devoid of logic. Phrasal verbs.
Oh, the absolute bane of every English learner's existence.
I am going to channel the collective rage of every language learner listening to this right now. Why on earth do we do this? Why do we take a perfectly functional, self-explanatory verb, stick a tiny random preposition onto the end of it, and completely obliterate the original meaning of the word?
The frustration is completely justified. The research we analyzed acknowledges this exact pain point. Phrasal verbs are deeply uninferable.
Let's look at the verb look. I use my eyes. I process visual information. If I look at a painting, I'm directing my vision toward the canvas. Logical.
Very logical.
But if I lose my wallet, I have to look for my wallet. Why does the word for imply a search? If I want to find a word in the dictionary, I look it up. Why up? Our dictionary is traditionally stored on high shelves.
It's totally arbitrary.
If I admire a mentor, I look up to them. If I despise someone, I look down on them. If I investigate a crime, I look into it. We have generated an entire matrix of distinct meanings just by swapping out two-letter prepositions.
It is maddening, but here is the essential takeaway from the academic research. Phrasal verbs are non-negotiable if you want to achieve true fluency.
Really? You can't just avoid them.
Native speakers possess a profound subconscious preference for phrasal verbs over their formal Latin-based equivalents.
Is that because of that Norman conquest history again?
Precisely. The formal words investigate, extinguish, postpone are Latinate. They sound slightly elevated, academic, or formal to a native ear.
Okay, so they sound a bit stiff.
Right. The phrasal verbs look into, put out, put off are rooted in the gritty Germanic everyday language. A native speaker in a casual setting will almost never say, please extinguish your cigarette. They'll say, put it out. They won't say, we must postpone the meeting. They say, let's put it off.
So if a learner just memorizes the Latinate verbs because they're easier to translate, they hit a massive ceiling.
They do. They sound like a walking textbook. And worse, they won't understand native speakers at a pub or a casual office lunch.
The researchers stress that learning programs often fail students by not explicitly teaching phrasal verbs as single lexical units. The trick is to stop trying to dissect them.
Do not analyze what look means and what up means. Treat lookup as a brand new, unbreakable word that means research.
They are pre-packaged blocks of meaning, which naturally leads us to the next structural level of vocabulary, collocations, the natural pairings of words.
The invisible magnetic attraction between certain adjectives and nouns or verbs and nouns.
The best analogy I have for collocations is a strict societal dress code. Imagine you're invited to a highly formal black tie wedding. You decide to wear a neon orange scuba diving wetsuit.
That would certainly make a statement.
Now, physically, the wetsuit functions as clothing. It covers your body. But if you walk into that wedding reception, every single person is going to stop and stare at you because your outfit is fundamentally wrong for the context. Words operate the exact same way.
That analogy perfectly captures the native speaker's reaction to a broken collocation. It isn't grammatically wrong, it just feels socially shocking.
Look at the examples from the materials we reviewed. Let's talk about weather. If there's a massive storm pouring water from the sky, a learner translates the concept of power and logically says, wow, there is strong rain today.
And the logic is sound. Strong implies force.
Right.
But the English dress code dictates that rain does not possess strength. It possesses weight. A native speaker exclusively says heavy rain. Conversely, wind possesses strength. We say strong wind, never heavy wind.
It's just the dress code of the words. What about making choices? A learner might say, I'm going to do a decision.
Make and do both imply taking action, but decision demands the verb make. You make a decision.
You never do it.
Right. You take a chance. You do not have a chance if you mean taking a risk. You break the news to a friend. You never smash the news or crack the news, even though break, smash, and crack are synonyms.
And for emotions. You can have a deep love for someone, but you cannot have a big love. Big love just sounds like a reality television show.
It does. If we elevate this to the cognitive level, mastering collocations is the exact moment a learner transitions from translating to actually thinking in English.
Because they stop building from scratch.
Exactly. Beginners build sentences like bricklayers, placing one tiny word next to another. Adjective plus noun. Strong plus rain. Advanced learners use prefabricated walls. They retrieve the entire chunk heavy rain from their memory simultaneously.
It drastically lowers the cognitive load. It's like utilizing the predictor text on your smartphone instead of typing out every single letter.
That's exactly how it works in the brain.
Let's touch on one final vocabulary trap before we move to the operating system. Nuance words. Specifically, the psychological difference between hear and listen.
One of our sources provides a brilliant breakdown of this, categorizing it as the difference between passive biology and active cognition.
Let's define hear first.
Hear is an involuntary biological reflex. You have ears, therefore you hear. If a siren blares down the street, the acoustic waves strike your eardrum and your brain registers the noise. You did not ask for the noise, you did not focus your attention on it. You simply experienced it.
It is entirely passive. I couldn't hear you over the traffic, but listen requires effort.
Listen is an intentional psychological act. You are actively directing your cognitive focus toward decoding the sound. You don't just happen to listen to a lecture. You make a conscious choice to tune into it and extract meaning.
This implies you can hear something without listening to it, which perfectly describes what happens when my partner's talking to me while I'm watching a football game.
Oh, guilty as charged.
The biological sound waves are hitting my ear. I am hearing the voice, but my active cognition is focused on the television. I am completely failing to listen.
A linguistically accurate, though domestically dangerous example.
Very dangerous. And speaking of dangerous mistakes, we have to clarify the ed versus ing adjective trap. This causes profound social embarrassment.
Oh, it really does.
I have had learners sit in my class, clearly exhausted by a long day, and tell me, I'm so sorry, I'm just so boring today.
Which forces you into the awkward position of saying, no, I think you have a fascinating personality.
Exactly. They're trying to express their own internal fatigue, but they're accidentally insulting themselves.
The mechanism here is elegant once it clicks. Adjectives terminating in ed board fascinated, terrified, exhausted describe the internal emotional state of the subject. It is the psychological result.
Result equals it ed.
Adjectives terminating in "n," boring, fascinating, terrifying, exhausting, describe the external entity or situation that is causing that emotion. It is the source.
So the boring grammatical lecture, which is the source, makes the student feel bored, which is the result.
Correct. The terrifying roller coaster makes the writer feel terrified.
If you tell someone I am boring, you're confessing that you are the source of boredom for everyone around you.
It is a critical distinction between expressing a temporary feeling and declaring a permanent personality flaw.
Okay, we've optimized the hardware, we've debugged the vocabulary software. Now we have to look at the underlying code that runs the whole machine. Welcome to the final stage, the grammar operating system.
This is where we examine the mortar that hold the linguistic bricks together.
And let's be honest, English grammar mortar is incredibly crumbly. Let's start with the smallest yet most destructive bugs in the system, the articles, a, an, and the.
These words are tiny, but they cause more red ink on academic essays than anything else.
The difficulty of English articles is profound, primarily because a massive percentage of the global population speaks languages where articles simply do not exist.
Exactly. As one of our sources points out, Russian, Chinese, Japanese, and many Slavic languages lack this grammatical concept entirely.
That is wild to me. If you don't have articles, how do you specify if you're talking about one specific apple or just apples in general?
Through context, word order, or specific measure words. So, when a Russian or Chinese speaker learns English, asking them to constantly insert these tiny, seemingly meaningless words in front of their nouns feels entirely arbitrary.
It feels like being instructed to randomly snap your fingers every time you say a noun.
That's a great way to describe it, but it isn't random. The research details 5 strict rules where learners consistently crash the operating system.
Let's look at Rule 1, job titles. A learner might logically translate their status and say, I am engineer.
In English, declaring a profession or a singular status mandates an indefinite article. You must declare, I am an engineer or she is a student.
Unless you are at the absolute top of the hierarchy, right?
Correct. If the position is singular and unique within the context, there is only one of them, you shift to the definite article. He is the CEO, she is the president.
Rule 2, adjectives modifying nouns. A learner says, he is busy man.
The singular countable noun, man, possesses a gravitational pull. It demands an article. Dropping an adjective like busy in front of it does not sever that gravitational pull. It just forces the article further out. It must be, he is a busy man.
Rule 3, public places. This rule feels incredibly pedantic. I am going to grocery store versus I am going to the grocery store.
English requires the definite article for specific public institutions or service locations, regardless of how many exist in your city. You go to the grocery store, the bank, the doctor, the airport.
But wait, I'm going to push back here. Earlier, we established the phrase going to school. We don't say going to the school. Why the contradiction?
That is the philosophical exception.
Oh, here we go.
For specific institutional buildings, school, church, prison, hospital, if the subject is attending the building for its primary philosophical purpose to learn, to pray, to serve a sentence, to receive surgery, the article is dropped. The criminal went to prison, the child goes to school.
The purpose overrules the building.
But if you are visiting that location merely as a physical structure, the article returns. The electrician went to the prison to fix the wiring. The mother went to the school to attend a meeting.
That is a staggering level of nuance. Rule 4, generalizations. A learner looks at a fruit basket and says, I love the apples. Or they look at humanity and say, the people are complicated.
The visual metaphor here is a camera lens. When you zoom the lens all the way out to encompass the entirety of a category, all apples in existence, all people on Earth, all water in the ocean, you drop the definite article. I love apples. People are complicated.
Zoom out, drop the article. Got it.
But the moment you zoom the lens in on a specific restricted group, the becomes mandatory. I love the apples in this particular basket. I don't understand the people in this room.
I love that camera lens analogy. And finally, Rule 5, superlatives. She is best player on team.
This is a mathematical absolute. Superlatives words utilizing est or most single out one unique extreme within a data set.
Like the tallest or the fastest.
Right. By mathematical definition, there can only be one best, one tallest, one most expensive. Because it is utterly unique, it requires the definite article. She is the best player.
If articles are the tiny bugs in the operating system, Prepositions are the catastrophic system failures. In, on, at.
The holy trinity of spatial and temporal confusion?
Let's talk about spatial prepositions regarding vehicles, because I see learners pull their hair out over this. I'm standing on a sidewalk. I get inside a car. I am in the car. Then I get inside a bus. Suddenly, I am on the bus. I have a roof over my head in both scenarios. I am physically enclosed in both scenarios. It violates basic physics.
It appears to violate physics until you analyze how the English language historically categorized the freedom of movement within transportation.
Okay, let's test this logic. If I am on a bus, on a train, and on an airplane, what do those three have in common? They are massive. Hands up.
Exactly. The preposition on is deployed for large modes of communal transit, where the passenger possesses the physical ability to stand up, walk down an aisle, and change locations while the vehicle is in motion.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
You can walk to the lavatory on a plane. You can walk to the dining car on a train. Therefore, you are on them. It also historically applies to transit you sit astride, such as being on a horse, on a bicycle, or on a motorcycle.
So the rule is, if I can walk around, I use ON, which means EN is used when I am trapped.
Essentially, yes. In OA governs smaller, private, enclosed spaces where your physical mobility is restricted. You must fold your body to enter, and once seated, you are confined to that seat. Therefore, you are in a car, in a taxi, in a helicopter, or in a submarine.
Freedom of movement equals on. Confinement equals in. That logic is rock solid. But prepositions also govern time. Does time have a logical framework?
It does. The temporal rules for at, in, and on construct a very distinct funnel shape, moving from the hyperspecific to the broadly general.
Let's trace the funnel.
At the absolute narrowest tip of the funnel, you find at. At is utilized for highly specific, exact points on a clock. At 6:30 p.m., at noon, at midnight. It is a single, precise dot on the timeline.
Move at the funnel. It gets wider.
As the time frame widens to encompass a 24-hour period, we switch to on. Days of the week and specific calendar dates demand on.
Yeah.
On Wednesday, on my birthday, on July 4th.
And the widest part of the funnel?
The top of the funnel is in. In is reserved for massive general blocks of time where the specific event floats ambiguously inside. We use it for months, like in September, seasons, like in the winter, years in 1998, decades in the 1980s, and general periods of the day, in the morning and the afternoon.
Hold on. In the morning and the afternoon, but I say at night. The funnel just broke.
Welcome to English, where every logical framework contains a trapdoor.
So frustrating. Why at night?
Historically, night was conceptualized not as a progression of hours, but as a single specific point of darkness, the absence of day. Therefore, it retained the hyperspecific at, it breaks the funnel, and requires brute force memorization.
And it isn't just learners who fall through these trapdoors. Native speakers mangle prepositions constantly.
They absolutely do. One of the resources features a brilliant pop culture artifact to demonstrate this. The Rolling Stones.
Mick Jagger.
Yes, Mick Jagger famously wrote and sang the massive hit song, Waiting on a Friend. From a prescriptive grammar standpoint, the title is entirely incorrect.
Let's run the diagnostics on that phrase.
The verb wait, when implying anticipation of someone's arrival, strictly collocates with the preposition for I am waiting for the train. I am waiting for my test results.
So what does the phrase waiting on actually mean?
To wait on someone is the professional action performed by a server in a restaurant or a butler. It means to cater to their needs, serve them food, and fetch their drinks.
So if we interpret Mick Jagger's lyrics literally, he is not standing on a street corner anticipating his friend's arrival. He is walking around with a tray of appetizers, serving his friend canapes.
Which is very hospitable, but lacks that rock and roll edge. He chose on because it sounded better rhythmically.
And if a rock legend can break the operating system to sound cooler, learners shouldn't agonize over every tiny prepositional error in casual conversation. The goal is communication, not perfection.
Absolutely. However, there are a few mechanical bugs in the operating system that will disrupt communication and immediately flag you as a non-native speaker. Subject-verb agreement is a major one, specifically regarding the word people.
People is a massive trap. Visually, the word has no S at the end. It looks singular. So a learner's brain processes it as a singular unit and they output. The people is happy.
But people is the irregular plural form of person. It intrinsically represents a multitude. Therefore, it mathematically requires the plural verb conjugation. People are happy. People do interesting things.
One of the teaching guides suggests a quick mental patch for this bug. Replace the noun with a pronoun before you speak. You would never say, they is happy. Instinctively it is they are happy, therefore people are happy.
It is a fast, reliable cognitive test. Another mechanical bug is the notorious missing "es" on third-person singular verbs.
She play football instead of she plays football. I hear this constantly, and logically, I understand why learners drop it. It feels redundant. We already established the subject is she. Why do we have to tag the verb with an "es" to prove it again?
It is a redundancy, a relic of older, more heavily conjugated versions of English, but it remains mandatory. The teaching guides emphasize that you cannot fix this by memorizing the rule. You have to build automaticity.
You have to train the hardware to run the software without conscious thought. How do you build that automaticity?
By narrating reality, the guide suggests spending 5 minutes every morning describing the routine of a family member out loud. My brother wakes up, he brushes his teeth, he makes coffee, he drives to work.
Just drill it into your brain.
Exactly. You force the "es" out of your mouth repeatedly until your neuromuscular pathways recognize the absence of the "es" as a physical error. It should physically feel wrong not to say it.
Practice until it feels wrong to make the mistake. That is incredibly powerful. Now, let's tackle the most complex feature of the English operating system: time travel. Specifically, the brutal cage match between the past simple tense and the present perfect tense.
Ah, I saw him yesterday versus I have seen him.
Let's build a high-stakes scenario. Imagine a learner is sitting in a job interview for a massive promotion. The interviewer asks about their software experience. The candidate wants to say they used a specific program back in 2020.
A very common interview topic?
Right, but their brain scrambles the tenses and they say, I have used that software in 2020. To a native ear, that sentence sounds like nails on a chalkboard. Why?
Because the concept of the present perfect is deeply philosophical, and many languages simply do not possess an equivalent tense. They use the past tense for anything that happened before this exact second. But English partitions the past into two distinct zones.
Let's define the zones. Start with the past simple. I used the software in 2020.
The past simple is rooted in the timeline. If you state a specific, finished point in time, yesterday, last week, in 2020, when I was a child, you must use the past simple. The action occurred, it concluded, and the door to that event is firmly nailed shut. It is historical data.
The door is nailed shut. Okay, so what is the present perfect? I have used that software.
The present perfect completely ignores the timeline. The specific date is irrelevant. What matters is the experience and how that past experience alters your current state of being. The door remains open. It bridges the past to the present moment.
So if the interviewer asks, do you know this software? And the candidate says, I used it in 2020. Using the past simple, they are just stating a historical fact.
Right.
But if they say, I have used this software, using present perfect, they are telling the interviewer, I possess the experience of this software, and that experience is actively living inside me right now, making me qualified for this job.
That is a brilliant translation of the subtext. The past simple is a point on a timeline. The present perfect is your life resume.
I went to Tokyo in 2015 is a timeline fact. I have been to Tokyo is a resume entry that makes me a more worldly person today.
Exactly. And if you attach a specific finished time to a resume entry, I've been to Tokyo in 2015, the operating system crashes.
Timeline versus life resume. That framing entirely demystifies it. Okay, we have covered spoken interaction, phonetic geometry, and psychological vocabulary traps, but we have to acknowledge one final, highly restrictive environment where all these rules mutate. We need to talk about academic writing.
One of the academic papers provided a sobering look at this arena. Written, academic English is not just formal English. It operates almost as a distinct dialect with an entirely different set of priorities.
In spoken English, the goal is fluid connection. In academic English, the goal is absolute, unassailable clarity. The cognitive load of reading a complex research paper is already massive. If the grammar is chaotic, the reader simply gives up.
Exactly. The source highlights several structural mandates. First is paragraph architecture. In spoken discourse or even creative writing, you can meander. You can utilize a two-page paragraph.
Sure, stream of consciousness.
But in academia, a paragraph is a strict logical container. You must present a single concept, provide the evidence, conclude the thought, and hit the enter key. You have to visually break the text down to guide the reader's eye.
You also have to aggressively purge all the fun software we just talked about. Idioms and phrasal verbs are banned.
They are the enemy of global academic comprehension. A learner might write, the researchers looked into the data and figured out it was wrong.
Looked into and figured out are highly colloquial.
Right. In a peer-reviewed journal, you must use the precise Latinate verbs we discussed earlier. The researchers investigated the data and determined it was erroneous.
Less is more. You also have to lock in your mechanics. You cannot drift between the timeline and the life resume. You cannot shift from past simple to present perfect randomly within a methodology section.
Consistency is paramount.
And you must choose your regional spelling and defend it with your life. You cannot write analyze with a Z in paragraph 1 and analyze with an S in paragraph 2.
It demands a level of rigorous, sterile editing that feels entirely divorced from the improvisational jazz of spoken English.
Wow. We have traversed an absolute mountain of linguistic terrain today. We started with the physical acrobatics of the tongue hovering to make an R. We survived the boardroom embarrassment of false friends.
We decoded the hidden matrix of phrasal verbs.
And we mapped out the operating system of timelines and life resumes.
We have truly reverse-engineered the chaos.
So bringing this all back down to earth, what is the grand takeaway for you, sitting at your desk right now, feeling overwhelmed by this mountain of rules? I'd hit you to recall our mission from the very beginning of this exploration. Encountering these traps, making these mistakes, sounding slightly robotic while you figure out the schwa, this is not a symptom of failure.
No, not at all.
This is the precise, unavoidable mechanism through which your brain maps a new reality. You have to walk into the linguistic dead ends to learn the layout of the maze.
And it is vital to remember the human element on the other side of the conversation. Native speakers do not view these mistakes with disdain. They view them with endearing respect.
They really do.
They intuitively recognize the immense cognitive horsepower required to operate a second language system. If you mistakenly announce you are embarazada instead of embarrassed, you haven't destroyed your career. You have simply gifted your colleagues a spectacular story that will build camaraderie for years.
Connection always overrides perfection. But before we wrap up this session, I want to leave you with a provocative thought, a concept to wrestle with long after this audio ends.
We know from cognitive science that language fundamentally shapes perception. The words and structures you have access to dictate how you process reality.
So what happens to your brain when you successfully navigate the illogical, contradictory nightmare of the English language? Think about it. When you force your brain to accept that pineapple contains neither pine nor apple.
When you internalize the invisible rhythm of the schwa.
When you master a phrasal verb system that defies all mathematical logic. Does mastering this beautifully broken system fundamentally upgrade your cognitive flexibility?
Does the daily act of reconciling English contradictions train your brain to become more adaptable, more resilient, and more open to the inherent absurdities of the real world?
I genuinely believe the chaos makes you sharper. It expands the bandwidth of your mind.
It is a profound psychological benefit to a very frustrating process.
It really is. And we want to know your perspective on this. If you experienced an aha moment today, if the timeline versus life resume finally unlocked verb tenses for you, or if you realized you've been pronouncing W with your teeth for 10 years, we want to hear about it.
We'd love to hear your stories.
Leave a comment below with the most spectacular, funniest English mistake you have ever made. Let's celebrate the glitches in the software. If this session brought value to your learning journey, please like this video, share it with your study groups, and absolutely subscribe to the Daily English Practice channel so you never miss another exploration into this fascinating language.
You started this journey looking for a clean, logical, step-by-step instruction manual.
But hopefully, today, we have helped you see the incredible chaotic beauty in the muddy waters of English. Keep practicing, keep making bold mistakes, and we will see you next time.